Welcome, good morning, everyone, to IMC Live, the interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective and your friends here at Karlaa 76. We are here, like Alan said, to help you make connections, learn, get results for your business, and we're super excited to have you join us. My name is Peyton Warren. I'm the marketing director here at Karlaa 76, and I am one of your IMC hosts today. Today, we've got some friends of the show joining us. Brittany and Karlaa, I don't even know how long you guys have been part of this community, back when
Forever.
I feel like before I was here, honestly, y'all have been here. So really excited to have y'all and your expertise on the show today. Um, we are talking about how to make an impact with marketing at a global company. Um, Maybe you've got uh, one division, maybe like Brittany and Karlaa, you've got divisions all over the world and different time zones and different countries. Um, that adds some complexity, I think, right? That makes some challenges. I think manufacturers now, it's really common that you have multiple locations. So we're super glad to have Brittany and Karlaa come on and just share what's been working for them and how they've been able to make a difference. So Karlaa, Brittany, you mind like just kind of telling folks a little bit more about yourself, where you work, and we can jump in from there?
All right, Brittany, you go first.
Oh, okay. So my name is Brittany. I work for Sumitomo Drive Technologies. So we make gear reducers, inverters, motors, all the things gearing related. So I've been here for about 12 years. So my entire career is industrial manufacturing. Started off project management, digital. So my background's really heavy digital. And now I work as the international marketing manager. So all things marketing for Sumitomo.
All right, and my name is Karlaa Gregory. I'm the digital marketing manager for the US. So I do a lot of things here from SEO to website optimization to emails. And I also do sometimes mentor the other regions that we're going to talk about today. And I've been at Sumitomo 5 years.
It's a long time.
Mm.
Longer than I've been anywhere for sure. um, maybe just to like get us started, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more about what Sumitomo's like company structure actually is. Could you tell us a little bit more about where y'all work?
Yeah. So for us, Sumitomo is like a big conglomerate. So it's not that popular here, but if you go to Japan, they're like Sumitomo who? It's almost like GE. We work for the mechatronics division, which is a division within that. So we have our headquarters in Japan, and then you have different sister companies, like I like to call it, around the world. So you have the US, so we're headquarters here. We have Germany, Asia Pacific, China, Korea. And then for the US specifically, underneath us, we have subsidiaries in Canada and Latin America as well. So Mexico, Guatemala. So we're kind of the America side of it, but we also have different counterparts across the world that are doing and selling the same things as us.
And Brazil.
In Brazil. Yeah, Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with all the area to cover, who defines impact and how do you do that in your marketing program?
Yeah, so for us, I think we really define impact. The company really leads on the marketing team to figure out what those definitions are. And it's really threefold. I would say first, it's, the hard metrics, the things that we all know, those business outcomes. What are your leads? What are your value of your leads? Things like that. But then also from another perspective, looking at brand recognition, market appearance. Are we, attracting new connections, new partnerships, even down to when we go to visibly present ourselves at trade shows or websites, how are we doing compared to our competitors? And then I would say the last thing in terms of impact we look at is how are we working together? Because at the end of the day, we're all resources. If we can work more efficiently together, that brings impact to our customers.
And I mean, some examples for me is like I try to create my impact by funnels. So like, top of funnel is going to be SEO win. So I think today we're number 3 for the keyword gear motors. We're always fighting with Granger, sometimes like Wikipedia, but like those are like real top of funnel wins, programmatic advertising, their impressions on that. For middle of the funnel is like our social media engagement. So how, not so much as how many people go to the website, but how engaged, like what's our engagement rate? Like I think right now our LinkedIn engagement rate teeters between like 20%, if not more, half the time. And that's amazing. And then we got the bottle funnel. So like how many leads, how are people converting on our website? So we'll use like Hotjar and kind of see how people are clicking around, and then just use GA4 events to kind of drill down some more, just to see if they're downloading files, are they clicking emails, are they clicking phone numbers, and just using those metrics every month.
Do those metrics matter in the same way at each division, or like how much are y'all talking globally about what's moving the needle in each region?
So I would say definitely on the conversion side of things, it depends because everyone's sites are a little bit different. We're all on one site, but they do vary. Those higher level, like, hey, how many leads are you getting? That is narrowed across the board. But then other things, for example, like Karlaa mentioned, the configurator. We have a configurator for our product. It is global, but it's used in various rates throughout the region. So, for example, it's used really heavily here in the US, but maybe not so much in China, for example. So some of those smaller conversion rates will differ. For the Americas, one thing that we try to do, right, between Canada, Latin America, and Brazil is set up similar conversions and all get on the same path. So Karlaa's been doing a lot of work to make sure that we're at least capturing those common ones, right? So form fills, someone reaches out to a sales rep, things that we all have on our site, and making sure that we're doing that. And then also putting that together using tools like Google Data Studio. So we have one centralized report of, hey, here's what our metrics look like. And then from there, we can all do our ad hoc report where we're all looking at that same data.
And we also share a Hootsuite tool. So we've been using that to also kind of track engagement overall. We usually find like benchmarks around the internet. I forgot where I found the most recent one for like social media engagement, but we try to help the other regions stay at least at like the benchmarks for manufacturing and that country that they're in or that region.
And so how much autonomy do you all have in developing your marketing strategy, and how much does the brand guidelines that are set at a corporate level impact how you all are trying to move forward?
Yeah, I feel like we're really lucky in that we have a lot of autonomy between our global, between Japan and us. So in terms of our marketing strategy, we do have a lot of autonomy. There might be things that affect that. So for example, R&D. R&D is kind of a little bit decentralized where different countries will develop different products and sometimes we'll get that. So recently Germany developed an actuator. And so now we're going to try and bring that to our market. So some of that will affect it in terms of like, hey, there's a new product launch that we have to be aware of. But in terms of a lot of, control down, we don't really have that. So I think we're lucky in that aspect. From a strategy standpoint of view, then for the Americas, our leadership here sets priorities at a high level that then apply for us, Canada, Latin America. And then from branding perspective, similar thing. We have different things that we can do in terms of using the logo, but they haven't really narrowed down the design. So we do have a little bit of freedom where recently the team just redid the way our brochure covers look. And as long as we stick within those logo branding guidelines, we're allowed to do that. But then we do like to carry that over in the Americas to make sure we're all having that same similar look and feel.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, how much does that freedom speed up the process, you feel like? Because I know in our experience, it seems like you kind of can take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back when it comes to bumping up against brand guidelines that you may not even were aware existed up to a certain level.
Yeah, there's definitely some things that or some rules and guidelines that do hurt the process. Like I remember one time, and this was a few years ago, actually, when I was at Global and Karlaa was still here, and we were trying to do email. And I think it was the DMIK keys, but some certain things are controlled by IT at a global level. So we do run into things like that where we're just trying to send out an email with our domain, for the love of God. Like, please let us do this. It's so simple.
If they want us to do this, we promise.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, we do have autonomy, but we kind of also still collaborate, or we might have stuff that's different, I mean, more important. So we do have mostly all the same products, but when you think about climate, so you think about Brazil, they're going to be really big in sugar. Like I think that's one of their top industries, like sugar, sugar processing. Here, maybe not so much, but the products are the same. So we have a large gear reducer called the Paramax. That's something that they use in sugar, but we use more in mining here in the US. So sometimes if it's an industry related campaign, we might not be able to align as well, but the products are there. So we know how like what to say for promoting the Paramax. And sometimes translations can be a little bit off too, but we get through it.
Yeah, I actually asked about that in the chat too, about how you guys are handling that
So the
that
one thing about
challenge.
translations is that um, I can tell when I wrote an ad or something because I love alliteration. So the Paramax is,
He's really good at it too.
and it's like,
Just
like
pull
love it.
through.
Paramax, the power that packs a punch. And so I'm like, yeah. And then I send that to, our colleagues in Latin America, and they're like, I think the word power is like fuego or something. Like it doesn't have that same So we kind of have to leave that up to them to translate or kind of figure it out that way. But everything else, like the assets, how the landing pages look, they can usually just copy that from us and then add their own regional flair.
Yeah, and I wish I could say that we have some like fancy translation system in place. We don't. We've tried in the past where we've done the ones where you put in and you can almost kind of build your library. That was a project in the past. So right now, a lot of times it's people who have other jobs just powering through it and translating. So there might be even times where we create something in the U.S. and another country wants to use it, but they can't. Right, going back to those blockers because you got to wait for someone to translate it. So different people will take that task when they can, but finding that professional translation for our industry is a little bit tough. And we've had some people been in there, but we do have things like recently, I know we added to our site, not Google Translate, but there's another one I just can't think of the name to help kind of speed those translations along. Karlaa and team will start translating just as a pass and then give it to someone. So it's at least now you're editing. So those are some workarounds. And then some things we just leave in English. Like we were talking yesterday about our manuals. We don't have working files for some of our manuals. So we need to create those, but we have them in English. But in Latin America, they might have that same manual and English is good enough for them occasionally. So in some instances, depending on what it is, we may even opt to not translate it or lean on our global partners because we have a subsidiary in Spain. So, do they have something?
Interesting. So y'all are seeing that it's sometimes just beneficial just to run it anyway, get the message out there, no matter the language of that
They push
country.
it out on their own. So we might have some campaigns that we run, and it's not like for them, but we give them the assets so they can run it on their own. Like especially I think about social media. I honestly forgot that Canada has Thanksgiving in October, and a few years ago I had posted Happy Thanksgiving last in November, and the guy was like, that's not, we've already had that. I'm like, oh, okay. So because there's so many like different things, and they might go to more trade shows than we do, so they might try to focus on promoting this trade show versus promoting the Paramax. They want to do the Paramax later. So we give them the assets to kind of do it on their own. And then I see in the chat, someone said about SEO. That's something I just started to work on. So I think what I'm going to try to do is try to find keywords at least. So that way they know like the H1 should at least include motor doors. I can't pronounce it, but that's how you say gear motors in Spanish. I would, at least have that because we have instances where they've kind of just blindly copied the page and it doesn't do as well for SEO, and I want them to do better. So at least if I can help them with the keywords and just some other like must-haves, I think that will really kind of tip the arrow forward for them.
Mm-hmm. So how else are you all helping other regions with stuff like social media?
My employee's on the call, and I should raise her hand and let her
And
I'll do it
she
before,
just
but
smiled.
But we so we have quarterly meetings with each region. So because again, everything's different here. So what we might find important is not important in Mexico or Canada. So we have quarterly meetings just to see how we think things are working. So we do some general content where it's like it's product based. We know for sure you're selling the cyclo, she's selling the cyclo, every region is selling the cyclo, crazy for cyclo. But we're making sure that like we have just a general cadence of content for those teams who might not have the power to remember to post every day or schedule content, 15 pieces of content a month. And we meet quarterly to see like, is this working? Do you want something else? Like, do you want us to increase the cadence on topics about this? And just to get a better idea of like what they like, what they don't like.
And I think that's been really, really key because a lot of times you could think something is going to work, but until you get into practice, it might be a little bit different. So one of the things that we talked about in terms of the Americas, right, working together is there might be some tasks that we can centralize, right, where we can do it for you, whether that's reporting, whether that is how, our brochures look to give that similar look and feel. And there's other things where it's going to be more regional, like our trade shows and things like that. But then there's other things where it's kind of a swap back and forth, right? Like Karlaa was talking, you might have something, we might have something that you can use, vice versa. And so we really went through and talked about those different marketing activities. But Karlaa has been doing a good job checking in with them because sometimes we think, hey, we'll post all this content for you. And the region's like, I actually don't need this, but maybe another region does. And so it allows you to be able to adjust.
And for the language, we don't translate. So the only content that we kind of push out is Canada's. But for the other ones, we kind of schedule it as a draft so they can go in there and translate it as they see fit.
They can decide,
Yeah.
is this relevant? How can I tailor it to my audience?
Yeah. And then the links too. So it's like, we would send this post to this page, but would you rather send it to like a different page? And since we all have different websites, we allow them to go in there and fix it and change it.
Interesting. Well, that's really nice that you kind of like prepare a draft because I think, like the blank page syndrome affects us no matter where you live in the world. And so like to have like at least a draft ready, I think is really, really helpful. I was just thinking about translation too. Actually, my very first professional job, I was a communications intern. And one of my jobs was to finish translation. So I was at an international nonprofit and we would get stuff that was probably just put into Google Translate, written by our communications directors in all these different countries. And then it would come to me and, I would find things like you were saying, Karlaa, like just like if you just translate directly, you might say something like instead of body, you say organism. And it's like, well, I don't really mean organism. I mean like, the body of this organization, not a bioorganism sort of thing. So I just think that's really, really special to be able to find a point of contact, like a technical point of contact in each language that's able to maybe give you a little bit of time if there's not like a marketing person in that region that can translate it. Something that I think David in the chat mentioned as like an internal reviewer, like an internal reader. I just think that's a really smart idea. Make sure that it actually makes sense and how it was translated if you guys are pushing anything that direction.
And something I'm curious about from my position as a writer is you're a challenge of providing ad creative that is going to be consistent and build the brand, but also will hopefully resonate in all these individual markets with all their individual challenges. So could you talk a little bit about that? Like how important it is to maintain consistency while still being able to give them the freedom to market to their region's needs?
Yeah, so for us, I know Karlaa's done some work with different ad creatives for, like she was talking about, our product lines that people can use across the brand. We also use different creatives that we have sometimes. So for example, we're doing a launch on a product that we're not really not well versed, but we don't sell as much in the US, but they sell in EMEA. So we've been using assets that they have to build our website pages, build our content. So we do a lot of sharing around that. It depends on what the actual asset is. When it comes to social media, we definitely let the regions have more freedom, right? So Karlaa will do an ad that will look different than what Mexico does, for example. So there is some freedom there, but in terms of how we're using the brand, that needs to be consistent in terms of like logo placement and things like that. So from our standpoint of view, I think that's a little bit more fluid, right? When it comes to advertising, we're very fluid in that. And what I've also found is that typically a lot of the regions aren't doing as much. So EMEA will put out a lot of their advertising is really like their brochure covers, things like that. Not as much digital ads, but here in America, we'll do more digital ads here in the US and Latin America, and Canada is also starting to do that as well too. So we've been helping Canada with their ads, and that helps with that consistency. So as we work on these group campaigns, we've noticed the consistency in terms of our messaging going out, really starting to tighten down. And one of the areas that we also want to start looking at is not only like visually, but our tone, right? Especially with AI, right? What do we sound like when we're talking to our audience, and getting that together as well.
Yeah,
We've got a lot of Sumitomo people on the call today, don't we?
keep pointing them out.
Following,
Just
yeah,
like
you
you were
pointing
too.
them out in the chat. That's great. And I really appreciate the folks in the chat all chiming in with ideas on how to improve your translation. That's super helpful. One of the things that came up when we were talking ahead of this call, Karlaa, you said that you've been like kind of preparing trainings
Mhm.
for the different regions. Can you like talk a little bit about that and like your role and like what you're helping them learn more about?
So, a lot of the regions are smaller teams, so they might not have like a dedicated person who does digital marketing like we do here. So I'm always trying to help them kind of learn the basics and do better there. So I've had meetings on just how to read analytical reports, how to do basic keyword research using SEMrush, how to use ChatGPT. So there is a regional, I mean, there's a ChatGPT login that I've let all the regions use to help them there. I did have a little bit of just some email how to, so like do's and don'ts. But I try to keep it base level. And if they want to learn more, I'll give them the resources, or if they have questions, they can contact me. I think on Microsoft Office, you can make office hours. So I have that way I can keep working on like, things that I'm doing day to day. And I know I have a set time where someone's booked a meeting for 15 minutes just to pick my brain on a campaign or something.
And I'll also add to like on those trainings, like some of them she even did for like company wide. So she did one on AI, right? So not just the marketing team, but others in the organization as well too, because they're all important players, in making this work.
And our lovely social media guru who is on the call, she did one on LinkedIn. So we always try to promote having people use LinkedIn and maybe talk about our products, talk about themselves, be thought leaders, whatever they want to be. So she did a really great job of showing them templates, shortcuts, what to do, what not to do. And everyone loved that one.
Do other regions kind of have they started to follow suit and do the same thing? Like, are they sharing what they're learning? Like, how are you guys, I guess, building on what's working in other countries too?
Yeah, so we have a bi-monthly meeting every month. So every couple of weeks we meet. And one of the things we like to do on an annual basis too is see what's working, what's not working. And so that helps us communicate that out, and take those lessons learned. So in that meeting, we'll talk about, hey, we did this in our region, we did this campaign, we're doing this learning. And that's honestly, I think, been the best collaboration that we've seen, so they can take that and build on that, like, oh yeah, we'd like something like that for our region. And
Even
I do feel
LinkedIn.
like, would you say?
I said even LinkedIn in that. So our
Yeah.
colleague in Latin America was like, these are really expensive. Is this normal? I was like, yeah, this is normal. This is
Mhm.
there goes your budget in like 2 days. But yeah.
Yeah. So we started seeing them do more. Like Latam's been doing definitely a lot more digital ads over the coming years. Karlaa's been running ads on behalf of Canada, so that's grown too as well. Like they've always had a Google Ads account, but nothing's really been in it. So we're trying to help manage that too. So we're seeing that grow. And those trainings, I think, have definitely helped. But then we also try and look at it, like Karlaa said, they're teams of ones, right? So what are the things that we're going to help train on, and what are the things that it may be better to assist heavy, right? Like if it's
SEO.
Yeah, SEO, it's like maybe we take that, and so that's one less thing. And then social, right? Because that's a lot more regional. You're speaking directly to your market. We involve them in there a lot more.
And with the SEO, is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I held the trainings and I was like, all right, guys, SEMrush, you got it. But they didn't. So it's like, okay, I really want to help y'all do better, but it might just be easier for me to do like some baseline keyword research just to get you there, and then you can do the rest.
Yeah, I think new channels can be really intimidating. I have still like I feel like we've been talking about AI for how long, and I've just started to really like use it on a
What? Even
regular
after the panel?
basis.
Even after my panel last year, really?
I know I know I just knew I had to do it, but it was like this intimidation factor, and I feel like it's the same thing with SEO a little bit, and even tools like SEMrush, where like you get in there and you're like, oh, it's just so much. Like, where do I even start? So I think it's just really savvy that you guys are meeting on a regular basis, sharing what you're learning, and like creating those opportunities to build on it, and like just continue to be a resource. So if someone does have questions, you can encourage them to continue to learn and continue to try. Because
And to add another level is that we do meet regionally. So if you think of North America, we meet a lot, but also we do meet globally as well. So we have a call about once a month where it's everybody. So it's 8 p.m. in Japan almost. We got Germany on the phone. We have Mexico, everywhere. England. I think that's where Infotech people are. We have all of those where we talk about like what's going on, major trade shows, any new big product launches that are going to be for everybody, not just regionally.
speaking of trade shows,
Yeah,
I
it's
think we had a
David
question in
Newman.
the chat about that, didn't we?
Yeah, David, I see you just popped up. Perfect timing. Would you like to come on and ask your question?
Hey, Karlaa. Hey, Brittany. My question was just very high level. How many trade shows is your group dealing with? And I guess how much involvement do y'all have within your region versus supporting other regions?
Yeah, so for our region standpoint of view, it can vary, but anywhere between like 12 to 15 a year. It wasn't
Holy
like that when I got
smokes.
here. No, it was crazy. It wasn't like this when I got here. It's just kind of exploded over the years. So it's a lot. Now, some of those are a lot smaller shows, and some of those are really large shows. From a regional involvement, our shows are very much regional with an asterisk, except for those shows that are really large shows that draw those international audiences. So, for example, we just went to Mine Expo, and because that's such a big show, we had our people from Latin America, from Guatemala, from Colombia come and talk to our potential customers. We had someone come in from Canada. We wanted to make sure that when we were staffing, we were very conscious in making sure that we had someone who spoke French and someone who spoke Portuguese. We had Brazil come in, someone who spoke Spanish, because we would have people come to the booth and say, hey, but not in English, and want to talk to someone. And so wherever that host is, we're really in charge of coordinating that show. So that show was heavily on the US. But we definitely pull in those resources, especially our industry experts from around the globe. And then I would also say that, and when getting into new markets, so I talked about Germany and doing the product launch for that new product. So when we're going to now these more robotic shows, we're bringing over the product managers from there, even down to, because I had an opportunity to go see one of their models over in Germany. And so we're getting the same one built for them there. So we're also borrowing, hey, how do you guys show from those regions and their people sometimes?
Yeah, you said 12 to 15, and I saw Peyton, her eyes got real wide open. And on our side,
Crazy.
if we got down to 12 to 15, I think our groups would feel pretty happy.
How many are you going to, David?
I'm not that involved. I think it's like 25 to 30 a year.
Ooh.
Holy.
Yeah.
I will stay thankful then and not complain.
It's a lot of time and resources. And I think,
It is.
if it was up to our sales teams, it would be more. So
Really?
we're
Yeah.
trying to find ways to not make each show quite such a bespoke experience.
Mhm.
And I think that this plays into regionality where we might have a set of products where of the 8 belts, 6 of them are important in the US and 4 of those are important in Europe. And each show wants to only show the belts that are important to their region. And I
Mhm.
have a colleague who's saying, this year, these are the 8 belts. If these 2 over here aren't important to you, don't talk about them, but they're going to be on one poster because we're not making 3 different versions for 3 different shows. So
Brittany,
those
do you
sorts
want to
of
talk
things.
about our pop-up kits?
Yeah, I was gonna say when you were talking through that, that's what that reminds me of. So sometimes when we, especially if it's a larger show, so anything usually over 10 by 20 or above, we'll outsource. So it's like the fully built out structure, like the ones that look really nice. But a lot of times we're doing a lot of 10 by 10s, by and large. And so for the 10 by 10s, a couple years ago, what we did is we bought the backdrops. But
Mm.
what we did is we chose a version that has like 3 panels and it's interchangeable. So we bought multiple structures, but then we printed out multiple of those fabric panels. So in the past, it was like, hey, this is the airport booth, this is the mining booth. Now it's like we have panels that have products. And our creative team spent a lot of time thinking about that, and it was a really good idea because you can kind of swap, and it's not just one booth. You can kind of take things off, or we can get another panel printed and it's only $300. So that's been helpful in terms of managing a little amount of booths, but giving that variety.
Yeah. And that's similar. We've got a couple different things where it's very
Mhm.
similar, but not the cherry show and the cheese show and the meat show are all food. So we can have a
Yeah.
food backdrop. And but that a lot of these teams feel like this is their big show. This is their one shot this year.
Exactly.
You kind of have to actively manage expectations of just like, yes, but what's on the walls of the booth is not the sole determiner of success.
Yes.
So
And we run into it a lot, right? Getting, you get pulled into different directions, and certain people in their mind, it's like, this is the thing. But like you said, I understand, but this one thing isn't going to like make or break.
awesome. Thank y'all.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to follow up on our last show about regional trade shows, what's your all's favorite thing about a smaller trade show versus a larger trade show?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think the smaller trade shows, typically um it's more like communal, right? Like you have people coming in that know each other, so we get a lot of feedback between like making those connections in those existing base. You really get to meet people, versus I feel like when you get to a bigger trade show, it can get kind of like lost in the sauce. Like there's so many people there that do different things, and sometimes you're there and it can kind of feel like, are these people even here to see me? Or to see the cool robot that's pouring beer in the corner, because that was really cool at Buildex a couple of years ago.
Favorite pint.
Yeah. So I think that, but I think they both have their pluses and minuses. I love big shows to like walk and see and get ideas, and even the possibilities of like, oh, especially Mine Expo, when that was my first time going, I'm like, I didn't even know you could put this in a building, you know?
And what she's talking about is a really, really, really big truck. I think it's about the size of 2 buildings, like in height, at least.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that'll
for me,
draw some
I guess my
eyes.
favorite is swag. That's my favorite. I love, the big show swag is always a little step beyond the usual. So of course I love having socks, pins, and the little squishy things, but the bigger shows have like really different stuff where you're like, wow, I never knew that you can get a custom made Stanley or pop socket or fire stick remote, all the things.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like,
what all this trade show talk's making me think of is like, so I don't think we've asked you yet, like, how are you guys like keeping track of all of your contacts? Like, is it all in the same, like, do you guys have, I'm guessing, enterprise level, like CRM, and is it all connected? So like if you met somebody at Mine Expo and they talked to a US rep, it can get handed to a Brazil rep, or like, how are you guys tracking that, if at all?
yeah, we use Salesforce, so that's ours. Salesforce is complex. I'm personally in freelance life a fan of HubSpot. Like I'm a HubSpot girl, but we use Salesforce. We are all in the same instance in the US. So other regions use it as well. But in the US, Canada, Latin America, I guess I should say Americas, we're all in the same instance. So it is possible to transfer that. So we do collect those leads. LATAM collects those leads, and we handle them separately. So we're able to assign those out to the different regions, but we're all in the same Salesforce instance, so that helps. It's not like we have to, moving that over across. And recently, Karlaa's been doing a lot of work with updating our lead process and how we handle trade show leads, and we're working through that. So we've come up with some new ratings. Some things have worked, some things haven't, but I think we've come out with a lot of good learning lessons. Like we just recently talked about maybe getting a version of the lead scanners that we can see for marketing. So when we're training and telling people how to do things to categorize, so when we get those leads, they're going to the right places. We can do that a little bit better, because there's been times where we've thought that the lead scanner functions one way and we'll tell sales to do something, and then they're doing it right. But when we get the leads back, we're like, oh, we're trying to figure out which ones are going to stay with us, which ones are going to get passed on to the district managers. How are we divvying them up?
And did you have any tips or tricks for adding digital components to trade shows? We have one from the chat there.
Yeah, so recently, I will say at our Mine Expo, that one we did, I would say probably the most that we've ever done in the past, and also it was a bigger booth. So at the last Mine Expo, we had an interactive website that we had. It was just one that people could come up to. This year, we made one kind of for each product. So beside each product, there was a display. Gareth, our great graphic designer, built that out. And so it was an interactive website that had interactive components, so you could see an exploded view because the product just statically sitting there. You can rotate through those components. Another section that talked about our service capabilities. Another section that had case studies specific to that product there. So we really leaned a lot on that, even down to we had a slot machine, but we did it digitally. So we've been trying to do that a lot more, because I feel like with all of us in industrial manufacturing, we probably have really heavy products. So the less you can bring and make it more of a digital experience, the more easier it is on you and your pockets.
And not digital, but hot cookies. Hot cookies work.
Oh yeah, we have the cookies too.
Really random.
Cookies help feed people. That helps.
Yeah, you can never overdo creature comforts, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear someone saw someone ask about AR and VR. We have tried that out, not at a trade show, but when I first got here, we actually developed an augmented reality app for Salesforce to use in person. And our brochure cover was kind of like the code that they could use, and so they could take and show our products out in the field. But we've been tinkering with trying to get one and do something for trade shows. That was on the docket this year. We just went another route.
Well, maybe we'll hear more on that in the future then.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up today, I'm curious, because like Sumitomo is a big team, right? You got several marketers on the call here today. I mean, I say big team compared to some. So any advice for like these really small marketing teams, or maybe like the person who is that one single marketer in a big global company?
Brittany, you want to go?
Yeah.
I was going to say, for me, it's like brush up on cultural communication and basic knowledge. So, you can outsource, but don't let the company or the freelancer just kind of tell you like, yeah, this is doing great because it has 1 billion impressions, when that's not the metric that you're looking for. Like, know at least just a baseline of this is what I'm looking for, how I want to A/B test, so you can give them suggestions so they can do that work for you. Also use AI. And then also just kind of brush up on your cultural communication. So, don't be like me and wish Canadians happy Thanksgiving in November.
And I will say, from a smaller team component, just look into any systems and tools, like are there things that you can templatize, or even if that's, I don't even know the word, but are there things you can make templates for, right? Like you even talked about, because there's a lot of tasks that as marketers we have to do that are not necessarily going to make more people buy, but they're critical or necessary to the business. So you make calendars every year. Like, do we need to make a new one, or can we just, revamp this every day? If you're making invitations, how about making a couple of styles? So when someone comes up, you have something to drop in. Even things like automating certain things. So we had teams, and they're small teams, that were spending time copying and pasting metrics out of Google Analytics. And it's like, okay, let's make a dashboard studio so you never have to do this again as a small team. So I think seeing what you can put in templates, seeing what you can automate, and I would say as a small team, seeing where you can get those synergies too. Where can you learn from other people around the globe, and not being afraid to give that feedback, because that's something that we do as a subsidiary to our global company, and that's been helpful. And then vice versa, like, is what they're doing helping you, and how can they adjust to work for you a little bit better?
And to also outsource and then know your data. So, like sometimes you see the US, we're doing all these great things, but do website users in Latin America, do they function this way? If not, you don't need to do this. Try to focus on things that will make that impact. So if your website's leaning towards bottom of funnel, focus on that. Don't focus on trying to add like cool stuff that we might do right now because you're limited on time and or resources.
Yeah, just gotta focus.
Yes, focus.
Keep it simple.
Yes.
Always good advice to focus. Well, I think we're right at time here. Do we have any other questions we wanted to get to before the end? I think we might have hit it all.
I believe we did.
I just want to plan to go to MindXO next year because I feel like everyone's talked about it.
It's a really
So many of my clients and everyone too. It just seems like a cool event. But I really appreciate y'all joining the show today. Brittany and Karlaa, we're just very grateful for you sharing your expertise and letting us know what's been working and maybe what's not been working so much for you guys in the global sphere. What we've got coming.
What was that?
What'd you say?
Where will people see us again?
Yeah. So if you want to see Brittany and Karlaa again, we actually are going to be having them as speakers at the Industrial Marketing Summit, which is happening in Austin in February 26th through the 28th. Yeah, we'd love to see you there. Come join us, industrialmarketingsummit.com if you want to learn more. For folks that are interested in like participating more in this community, even if you can't come to the summit, we do have an online community where you can chat. It's moving from Slack this month to Circle. So if you are an industrial marketer and you want to connect with other industrial marketers, in-house folks, then reach out to me, reach out to Alan on LinkedIn, reach out to any gorilla, and we can tell you a little bit more about how to get into the collective on Circle. And next time is our final show of the year. I can't believe it's December 5th already. It's December 19th. Our final show is going to be an Ask Me Anything. So you'll see the gorillas on here in force. Everyone from our content writers to strategists to performance marketers, designers. So anything you guys want to talk about, we're game. So we hope to see you then and hope you all have a great end to your week.